So let's assemble a Harbor Freight glass cabinet. I bought this because I have some wire wheels for a car I'm restoring. Some of them are right over there. And I got a quote to do them for about 40 bucks a piece. Well, I've got 6 of them, so that was going to be $240, which is a reasonable price. But basically, I bought this for $138, I think, out the door at Harbor Freight, and I couldn't afford not to. So the end of the deal, I'm going to make some modifications to it right off the bat. I'm going to put a new light. I'm going to lower the floor of it, do some things like that. So there's some great videos out there and on how to do this. The problem is they're either chaotic, they go around in circles, or they're astoundingly long, an 8-part series. And that's all great, but this is not that complicated. And so I'm going to walk you through, this is the latest version of the cabinet. This is different than some of those other videos I'll show you. Harbor Freight has made some, I think, some really good changes. They've started actually installing this foam rubber by default, and you'll see it on the front as well. And so this will help in sealant. The first thing I did right off the bat is pulled out my trusty heat gun, and I removed the giant ugly sticker off it. It came off in seconds, and I just can't tolerate those giant Central Pneumatic stickers. I have a love-hate with Harbor Freight, but I just can't stand it staring me in the face. So some of the other changes is Harbor Freight has now started going to Ziploc bags instead of kind of the bubble containers, which I actually really approve of. So I think this is going to make things a little more efficient. They now include a tube of sealant because these things are known for being extremely leaky. The trap door in the bottom appears to have gotten a little weaker. This thing is a little bit flimsy. I'm not going to lie. I think it'll work, but I'm not absolutely thrilled with how it looks. So right off the bat, I'm going to install this light in it. I think that will improve things immensely. I'm not even going to bother with the fluorescent that comes with it. I'm going to change the glass is attached by several screws from the inside. You got to be kind of a monkey to get to the back of them. I'm going to switch those around so that they've got knurled nuts coming off the top. So anytime I want to change the glass, it'll be pretty painless. So anyways, let's get this done. Basically, the way it works is it's you have to assemble 2 pieces. You install the hopper, which is the angled part on the bottom, and then you install the top part, and you essentially marry them together. And so this should be, it looks pretty straightforward. The first thing I did is, I'm not sure I have to do this, but I drilled holes just with my screw gun where the bolts are going to go. I think that'll just help with alignment. It's super fast. I just don't want to be trying to poke through the foam and trying to get things aligned. So anyways, next step. So this is going really fast. I'm pleased. What I'm doing is I'm putting the nuts in from the inside to the outside. Basically, I'm just lightly going finger tight on them for now. They're all 10 millimeter nuts. And basically, I'm going just finger tight because I want to get that top edge lined up. And so I'm going to do the top one. It's going really fast. And I'm not bothering. There's another video on YouTube where the fellow grinds down these screws so that they catch less sand. That seems a little overkill to me. I respect the fact that he's a pro, and so it might make a tiny bit of difference to him. I'm not going to bother with that. But it's going really fast, and I'm really liking it. Everything's lining up. The quality appears to be, if not good, certainly acceptable. And so anyway, I'm going to tighten up some of these sides. I'll grab the 4th side and throw it on, and then I will attach the bottom piece, and we'll kind of compile this whole part and set it off to the side. So I'm about 10 minutes in, and have the hopper assembled. So that was quick and easy. I strongly recommend that if you have a drill, or in my case an impact, 10 millimeter socket on it, and it goes just incredibly fast. So the only negative I guess I really see, I'm actually quite impressed thus far, and you don't hear me say about the Harbor Freight very often. You certainly do see the scalloping. You know, it would probably benefit from a couple more screws in there. But because the foam's in there and because they provide silicone, I'll certainly put a small bead of silicone in there. I'm actually pretty pleased. The other thing that's actually been really nice, Harbor Freight traditionally has terrible fasteners, and this is one of the things I despise about them. I'm really pleased that the nuts that they provide have the little the locking feature on them. It just makes it go really fast. So basically, you just put a tiny washer with every screw and then put your nut on the back side, and it just goes together like butter. So really pleased. So I've attached the hatch just very, very lightly because, I don't know, this thing is a little bit cheeseball. You'll also notice that you have to do a little tweaking to get things so that they'll line up. And then you got to make sure that your foam is being compressed all the way around. This thing's going to leak like a sieve if you don't. Overall, I think it'll work. I'm not thrilled with the quality of this little part. But right now it's finger tight. I'm going to tighten everything down. Typically all I have to do is just throw a little finger pressure on the back side and hit it with my impact, and it tightens right up. I think this will work. It's definitely going to take some silicone around the edges. Otherwise it'll leak. But I think it's going to work all right. So now that the hopper's put together, I'm using the silicone that Harbor Freight provided me. I actually had already bought a tube for this purpose, but I think it's kind of cool that they actually have listened to the complaints and they provide it now. So you just put a tiny, tiny little, maybe an 1/8 inch. If you can go smaller than that, feel free. And then I tend to just lick my finger just to get a little bit of moisture on it, and then just gently drag. So, and then this is going to dry clear, so it should be completely smooth. You do not need to press very hard to do this. As a matter of fact, you probably don't want to. So just real light. And it's not going to take paint, so it's going to go on clear, and it's going to probably get a little bit dirty over time, but it's the inside of a cabinet. I think I'm going to be pleased with that. So I'm going to do all 4 sides. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do inside here just to get all the nooks and crannies there. Okay, so make sure to get every nook and cranny in there. You want it to be very, very, very smooth. You don't want anything to catch sand on the way by. If you have any doubt on if you've gotten everything, put a flashlight right behind it so you've got plenty of light, and if you see any specks of light, what you really want to watch out for is right in those corners right there. Just make sure you got everything good, and that it's nice and smooth. It doesn't have to be thick, although I suppose it could be if you really wanted it. But just get it all, and I think that'll be good. So as you may have noticed, I'm not working from the instructions. The instructions are largely worthless. They are microscopic, and they just have zero detail. Not that I probably would have used them anyway. The reality is common sense, I think, will do you well. So the next step, I'm going to mount the glove mounts, simply because now is a really easy time to do it. You have to, they come with the rings on them. Take the rings off, obviously. We'll put those back on later when we put the gloves on. So it tells us that these are the little screws we're supposed to use, which kind of annoys me. They're a little bit longer than I prefer, but we'll try it, and we'll see how that goes. So I installed those. That went easy. There's a rubber gasket here. I did not put silicone on either side of that rubber gasket. I guess we'll find out later if that was a mistake. The rubber should do the trick, but you just never know. So I mounted one side of the cabinet, primarily just to keep it standing up. The next step is I'm going to swap out the light. So this is my new light. It came with this is just an outside floodlight. It came with this base that I took off, and I'm just going to throw that away. I could save a little extra space and mount it way up in the corner. Instead, mainly because I think I just want to keep the existing switch on the outside, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slightly enlarge that hole, and that will fit that piece right there. So just drill a quick hole with my handy dandy step bit. That's just, I so rarely use this thing that it was a Harbor Freight unit for a couple bucks, and for what I use it for, it's great. So I'll just drill that out and we'll drop that in. Okay, so drilled that out one step, and so that fits in there beautifully. Just have put the little nut that came with it on the back side, and the switch will mount right there, and we'll just use the existing switch. So as you're installing this, I found that it definitely is valuable to drill out the foam in here just for alignment purposes. It helps. It takes just a split second, and it's valuable. The other thing that's really helpful is I just have a scratch awl, which I put in, and it helps me get things aligned. So I do that. And then I also found the first mistake from Harbor Freight, and it's absolutely trivial. So this corner is where the hinge mounts, and the hinge holes are ever so slightly too small for the bolts. So I drilled those out to 1/4 inch. There's just 4 of them. It took just a split second, and so now that'll mount. So my justification for buying this was to sandblast some wire wheels. Obviously, there's more things I'm going to sandblast than that, but in order to do that, while technically the wheels would fit in, I think it's going to be a lot easier if I make this grate a little smaller, which will drop it further down the hopper. It comes technically with this unit here, which is designed with these steel rods, and they will support the screen. But I'm not going to use those, I think. So I'm going to cut the screen down. These are the dimensions I'm going to cut it down to. 25 7/8 by 16 5/8. So I've already marked on here, and I've got my trusty angle grinder, and I'm wearing my safety glasses, and I'm just going to cut that out real quick. Okay, so an angle grinder made quick work of it, and I semi-mitered the corners. I didn't measure my 45s. It doesn't really matter to me. So this stuff just pulls right out. I'm going to reuse the old edging, and I'll probably just tack weld it back together. It doesn't really probably need to be welded, but I'm going to do it anyways. So it's funny, but the trickiest part of this whole thing is just getting these little wires lined up. So you basically just have to go down every other one and kind of bend it so that they will fit inside the new channel. It's not hard, it's just kind of fiddly. So one of the other videos I watched, which was really well done, but astoundingly long, suggested that this piece, which comes in the unit and is basically unexplained, should be glued to the underside of the hopper as a strengthening piece, and that seems like a really good idea. So I've added some caulk that Harbor Freight supplied, and I'm going to attach it, and then I'm just going to kind of set it off to the side to dry. And then once that is dry and stiff, then we'll use it to assemble to the other cabinet. Okay, so that was the first really bad idea we've had. That piece was the first one from Harbor Freight that was completely just misaligned. It took a fair amount of massaging to get it to match the bolt holes. So I ended up having to put some bolts in it just to keep it in shape. And so I had to attach them on all sides and then run my finger just really pushing the silicone into place to keep it from, like, even right there, that's kind of sticking up. I'm going to have to probably work on that just a tiny bit. It was just really hard to get it into place. I'm not sure that was a great idea. It'll work, but it's just kind of annoying. So anyways. Okay, so I'm putting the top in place. I just basically flexed the top in from underneath, and so it's going to fit right in here, and I'm just going to attach everything there, and so that'll work really well. You got to be careful. I don't know if you can see it in the light, but I ever so slightly grabbed this, I grabbed it right there, and it actually bent the metal. Boy, this is flimsy stuff. So I'm going to try to straighten that out just so it looks a little prettier. It's kind of an annoying spot to have that little wrinkle. But anyways, it's going well. So I got everything into place. It took some flexing to get in. I would really recommend that if you're going to do this yourself, that you start in the corners. So do these two, these to those two. And I've also stopped drilling the foam. Instead, I just use my awl because I was using it anyways. Basically, I need that to line everything up. So I kind of poke through the foam and wiggle it around and get the right spot. But if you start in the corners, then wiggling this stuff into space is much, much easier. So I'm in the process now of fitting the part to hold the glass in. I'm going to reverse the screws. Harbor Freight wants you to put screws in through the front, and I'm going to have studs coming from the back. And I think that'll help a lot. Okay, so I've attached some, these are 832 screws, 1 inch long. And I've just put them in through the back side and attached a nut from the front, which is no big deal. So that'll work great. The only problem is if you set this on there, basically, let's see, where is, okay, this is how it comes. So it comes flat. And so basically that nut would end up having the whole frame sit out, the width of the nut. So what I've done is I took a drill bit and I just drilled each of those down. So that's before and that's after. And the drill bit is just a standard, it's kind of got some surface rust on it just because this is an old one. But it's just a 3/8 spade bit is what they call those. And nice day to be hanging out inside as I look out and I see the snow. So anyways, after doing that, I can mount this on directly and it sits flush. And now I can just put a knurled nut on there and it's going to be very, very easy to change the glass from the front. So anyways, I can't claim that this idea is my own. I saw it elsewhere and it just seemed like a great idea, so I decided to incorporate it in my cabinet. So I married the top to the bottom. That took just about every hand I have. It was kind of a stretch. I'm not going to lie. That was not terribly easy, not difficult either. Just annoying, trying to reach and trying to get the screws and the nuts lined up when the whole cabinet is just a little bit catawampy. So, anyways. Getting ready to attach the legs. As you look, the only thing to remember is that there's some of these little shims that come with it. They're just to make up for some of that gap. Oh, one thing to point out is I did put some weather stripping in between here, and the only reason why I'm doing that is because so I bought this at Lowe's. You can get it anywhere. Just buy the thin gap stuff. This was the piece that was supposed to go there that I didn't install, and so it had weather stripping on both sides. Because I didn't install it in there, I needed to replace that weather stripping. So anyways, I'm getting ready to mount the legs, and then we'll turn it upright. So here's my revised grate. I real quick welded the corners and just hit them with red paint, I guess because of vanity, I'm not quite sure. But so that's ready to go in. That should sit a couple inches lower than it has. The legs are on. Those went on easy. So basically the meat of it's done. I'm going to put it in place. I'm thinking of making a quick baffle to go over this to just to force the air to come up and into it. That should be a quick fix. So almost done. So I made a quick baffle to cover that vacuum port. It was not fancy. It just was the leftover piece of roof flashing I had. But I'm going to screw it right over that hole there so that the air has to come up and into there. So there's my baffle installed. Don't worry, that bulb will be replaced. It's just a temporary one just to kind of try things. But this cabinet is actually making me rethink my view of Harbor Freight. I Typically, I'm pretty convinced that Harbor Freight stuff is junk and that it's going to be replaced. And I don't hate this. Even the gloves are not bad at all. They're flat out reasonable. I'm actually really excited about this cabinet. I just don't really see anything that's just terrible about it at all. I think I'm thrilled. Had this cabinet had a different brand name on it, I would have been pleased if this was an Eastwood cabinet or any other thing. This is certainly better than anything I've ever gotten at Harbor Freight before. So I'm pleasantly surprised. This is great. So I've been using it for about a half an hour. That's a couple days later. And I've got some words of wisdom, maybe. Certainly lessons learned. First of all, this gun, throw it away. It's garbage. It's absolutely not worth using, and I would never dream of selling this to someone. I'd feel terribly guilty. The reason being is this 90-degree angle. You're just never going to create laminar flow with that design. It's a terrible idea. Throw the gun away. Luckily, I had this one from my old tiny benchtop cabinet made by Clark. It's a much better design. The difference is absolutely night and day. So I'm just going to use my old gun, and I'm pleased. I would love to upgrade to the Scat Blast gun, but it is $60 or $70. I just can't imagine that I'm going to see that much of an upgrade, and I'm pleased with what I've got right now. Let's see. I did change to the switch on top. I just wasn't really happy with it on the side. I also mounted, I also have an outlet in there that turns on and off with the switch. I have the shop vac turned off so that it doesn't blast the volume. But the one light is great. I'm really pleased with it. I think for vast majority of things I do, that will be fine. Unfortunately, for blasting wire wheels, which are tall and I want to stand upright so I can get all the edges, I'm essentially blasting in shadow on when I'm using my right hand, and that's kind of annoying. So I'm going to actually mount some LED puck lights. These are line voltage lights, so I'm not going to be using a transformer. And I'm going to mount these inside the cabinet here, here, and here on this side. And I think that will eliminate the shadows and give me a much brighter environment all around. The cabinet doesn't leak at all. I'm thrilled with that. I think for $135 it is a bargain. Let's see. Lessons learned. So it comes with white silicone caulk. I erroneously thought it was clear caulk, and because that would make the most sense. And clear caulk, when you put it on, typically goes on white and then it dries clear. This never dried clear, so it's just plain white, and it's ugly. And it's silicone, which means it's slightly tacky. I mean, it certainly dries, but it leaves a soft texture that sand doesn't flow off of very well. So if I were to do it again, which I'm obviously not, I would use a polyurethane caulk, a roofing caulk. You can buy it in black. It dries hard, which is a good thing in this case. It's also paintable, so if you really wanted to, you could caulk those joints with black caulk and then hit it with some red spray paint. It would look beautiful. Plus the sand would flow off it better, which is a plus. Let's see, final thing. The other thing that's criticized on these cabinets is the pickup tube. So this is, if I can zoom back far enough, this is the one that Harbor Freight provides. It's a tube within a tube design. The inner tube is the one that sand flows up through, and the gap between them is allowing for some makeup air. I don't think it provides enough makeup air. It works okay. I was more surprised with how well it worked than with complaints. One thing I did find is that it chugs a lot. Essentially, it surges sand, and then it doesn't blow, and then it surges and doesn't blow. So I actually drilled a hole right there, a small hole. And what that allows is just a little more makeup air to hit that tube, and it smooths out the airflow and it stops the chugging, at least mostly. I also did a little bit of research, and I came up with a different design. This one is a design from TP Tools, and they kind of document basically a 1/2-inch pickup tube, and it's basically 2 tubes side by side. There's a 5/16 hole right there that connects the two. And basically it creates kind of a loop of air, which does a little bit better job. It's not a great, I wouldn't say the difference is dramatic, but it's certainly worth doing. And so I'll be using that one. And I'm pleased with it. So anyways, if you're considering buying this cabinet or one of the smaller ones, if you've got the space, this is a steal. I'm thrilled with the quality. It doesn't leak at all. When you put the shop vac on it, and I actually have a small cyclone to go with my shop vac, which I think it'll help a little bit, but I don't have any problems with visibility other than the shadows I talked about. Buy this unit. It's a steal at this price. And if you can get a better gun, if you're going to use this a lot, I think buying an additional $60 gun is probably worth it. For me, it's not, but I'm thrilled with the unit. So I would consider this a great deal, and I'm really pleased. It took me probably 5 hours-ish to put it together, and I think I did it reasonably speedy, but I could have gone faster. I certainly could probably do it in a fraction of that time the second time. But anyway, buy this cabinet. It's great. So I guess I should say one final note. If you have any advice for me in terms of how to improve the pickup tube or an inexpensive gun that might improve performance, I'm certainly open to ideas. But as it is, it has certainly proven to me, before, this is kind of my ratty wire wheels after, it's certainly proving to be valuable. And I've spent a little bit of time on this wheel. It was all rusty and nasty with a lot of peeling and rusty paint. And boy, a little bit of work and those spokes just clean right up. And so I'm not remotely done with this wheel, but it's certainly getting a good start. I also, just for fun, started blasting an exhaust manifold that was really nasty. It's making good work of it. So I'm pleased. Buy this cabinet.